Hey everyone, and welcome to my free CCNA Cisco Certified Network Associate course. So today we are going to look into Cisco Command Line. So the objectives for today's session are going to be that we are going to look at what are the different ways that can access the Cisco devices with. Then we are going to look at what is the Cisco console port and what is the way to access the Cisco console port, what is the configuration required, and what has been the evolution of Cisco console port over the years. Once we have the access to Cisco device, what are the different modes available in the command line interface? And in the end, we are going to look at the memory storage of the Cisco devices, where the configurations are stored, where the operating system is stored, how is the boot take place, what memories are involved. Let's get into it. So when we buy the Cisco device or when we start operating on the Cisco device, the first access that we are going to do is through console port. The reason for this is that Telnet and SSH both require an IP address, and by default there is not going to be any IP address on the device. So first access that we are going to do is through the console port. Once we access the device through console port, we can configure the device to be accessed through either Telnet or SSH as per our requirement. But Telnet, remember, is an unsecured way of communication, as all the transaction that is going to take place between the user and the device is going to be in an unsecured open text manner, whereas in SSH it's a secured communication, and it requires RSA key to be established on the device first, and then only the communication will take place. So to access through console port, we have various options, and over the years these options have evolved as the devices, the user device, that is the laptops and the desktops, have evolved. Earlier on we used to have serial ports, that is a DB9 port in our laptops and computers, through which we can use a direct console cable, that is a DB9 to RJ45 cable, to access the Cisco device. But slowly and slowly serial port was obsoleted and we only had USB ports in our devices. So then we started using USB emulator, USB to serial, that is, and from there we used to connect a DB9 to RJ45. The RJ45 cable is a rollover cable, that is, pin 1 is connected to pin 8, pin 2 is connected to pin 7, and therefore they're on. And now what we use is we directly connect to the USB port of the Cisco device. The USB port in the device, it acts as a serial interface or serial emulator. So now we don't need any USB to serial emulator or USB to serial cable, and we can directly connect from our USB port on our laptops to the USB port on the device. So this is what out of the box a Cisco device looks like, and this is what a RJ45 console port looks like. So this is not an electric RJ45 port. That means you cannot plug in a normal Ethernet cable. That will not work. It might even spoil the port, so you should not use that. The console port is different to the electrical Ethernet cable that we use for normal communication. And this is what the USB port or the USB console looked like on the Cisco device. So once we have connected a cable, we'll need something like a Putty, which we can use to connect to our serial port. You can use Putty, you can use Mobaxterm. There are various softwares available. I'm showing you Putty because this is generally the most used software for this purpose. You need to choose the right COM port that is connected. So the right USB COM port that is connected to the device. You can check this in your device manager if you're using Windows. The baud rate, that is the speed at which the connection is going to connect, is 9600 bits per second. The data bits is 8, stop bits at 1, parity none, and flow control also at none. So this is the default setting that you will use to connect the device with. This console is very similar to what we see in Cisco Packet Tracer. That is, if you will open your Cisco Packet Tracer, the CLI here, this is the actual console that you will see in the device, on which you can operate and do your configuration and everything on. So when you connect to the device, the first mode that you enter is where you see the greater than sign on the switch prompt is the user mode. So this greater to sign that is there represents the user mode. So whether you're connecting through console or through Telnet or through SSH, the first mode that you connect with is the user mode. In user mode you have limited access, that is, you can do commands like show. Show commands either gives you access to the configuration or to the details of the various configured interfaces or settings on the device. but you cannot actually do any configuration from the user mode. Also, in a user mode, you cannot do commands like reload, that is, reload the system. The privilege available in the user mode will be read only. To access higher privilege, we'll need to access enable mode. Enable mode is also known as privilege mode. To access the enable mode from the user mode, we need to use the command enable. Now in this enable or privilege mode, you can use commands like reload, and you can enter into the configuration mode. From enable, that is the privilege mode, when you need to go back to the user mode, we use the command disable. So this way we can toggle between the both the commands, that is, from user mode we'll use enable, and from the enable mode we'll use disable. So let's look at these two modes in action. In our Cisco packet tracer, I have the switch. You connect to the switch. This is the first prompt that you get, that is the greater to sign, and this is the user mode. To go from the user mode to the privilege mode or the enable mode, we use the command enable, and the sign changes from greater than to hash. And to go back, we use the command disable. Now in the user mode, we can use commands like show IP, interface, brief, and we'll be shown the IP addresses of all the interfaces on the device. But we cannot do commands like reload. So if we do commands like reload, it returns that this is an unknown command. And also if we do configure terminal, this is the command that we use to enter the configure mode. It again returns with that there is an invalid input. If we remove the terminal part, it says that again the command is not found, or the computer name is not found. It is again trying to find a computer. So to execute these commands, we need to enter the enable mode, and in this mode, when we use commands like configure terminal, we enter the configuration mode of the switch, and if we even try to reload the switch, the command works. It says that there's some configuration change, whether we want to save it or not, because we entered the configured mode. So we can say no right now because we didn't do any changes, but still let's say no, and then we can confirm, and the switch starts to reload. Okay, now the switch has rebooted. So now you know that user mode and the enable mode are two different modes, and user mode is primarily a read-only mode, and the enable mode has some privileges that come with it. While in the switch itself, the commands that I was entering was complete enable, but you can use ENA, just the short form, and press the tab key, and the command will autofill. You can even check what commands available by using the question mark key. When you press the question mark key, all the list of commands that are available on the particular mode or the particular prompt will show up. So there will be different set of commands that are available in enable mode. There are different set of commands that are available in the user mode. So you see that the user mode has very less commands available as compared to the enable mode. Also, if you are stuck up somewhere, say you do not know which command to use, again this question mark will assist you. So for example, that you need to enter the configure mode but you don't remember the command, so you can press the question mark, and then you can go with conf, again press the tab to fill the command for you, and then you can again press the question mark to see what are the other set of commands that are available. So in this case it says terminal, so again this is the command that we will use, and you will enter the configure terminal mode. Note that the network engineers are used to entering terminal mode by using just the command conf t, and you can enter the terminal configuration mode from here also. But as a starter, as a beginner, as a learner, I would advise that you learn the complete commands, because otherwise you'll get confused and this will create a problem for you in learning process. While in the command line interface only, you can use the direction keys to go back to the previous command by using the up arrow key. When you're going through the history, you can come back to the recent most command by using the down key. This way you can navigate through the previous commands that you might have used, and if you want to reuse the same command, so for example you want to use configure terminal, so you can just go back up and just press the enter key. Question mark you can use to check what are the commands available, and if you know the command, the beginning of the command, say conf, you can again press the question mark to see what all commands are available which are starting with conf. You can use the tab key to complete the command for you. So tab and question mark will really help you along in navigating through the CLI. I would seriously advise you to use the less of tab. Try to write the commands incomplete yourself. It will be cumbersome to start off with, but yes, it will be a great experience for you, and you will learn and you will remember this thing in future also. So let's see all these three modes on the whiteboard once again. The first mode is the user mode. This is the mode that the first time that you log into the switch, this is the mode that will open. The second mode is the enable mode. This is the higher privilege mode, not the read only mode like the user mode. And the third mode is the configure mode. So from user mode to enable, so from user mode to go into the enable mode, we use the command enable. From the enable mode, when we want to go into the configuration mode, we use the command configure terminal. To go back from configure mode to the enable mode, we use the command end, or we use the key sequence of control plus Z. And from enable mode, if you want to go back to the user mode, we use the command disable. Now here you need to note something, that from user mode you cannot go directly into the configure mode. This is not possible. You have to go to the enable mode and then to the configure mode. This is because the user mode is read-only mode. It does not have privileges. The enable mode is the mode that has this privilege to go into the configure mode. So let's go back to our switch and let's enter the configure terminal. Now in configure terminal, when we enter, we see the configuration as config. Now here some commands like hostname configuration are the global commands that can be used directly. But some commands like giving IP addresses to the interfaces, we'll need to enter the interface subcommands, so FA01, and we see the configuration tab changes from config to config if. This IF stands for interface. Similarly, if you go to line con 0, so line con 0 is the console interface, and we can configure the console interface from line con 0. We see that the prompt changes from config if to config line. So inside the configuration command itself, there are many sub interfaces or sub commands or sub levels, and these sub levels are what we are going to be using to configure our devices. And we'll see as we go along in this course how to configure various levels and enter various command levels. So let's switch our attention a bit to the device's memory and how the iOS is stored, how the switch boots or the router boots, and where the configuration is stored. So when the device boots, whether it is a switch or the router, the first memory that comes into play is the ROM, that is the read-only memory. This is the memory that is loaded first onto the device, and when it turns on, it searches for an iOS on the device, and if it's found, then the iOS will load it into the RAM. And the iOS is stored in the flash memory, that is a kind of a hard disk for the switch or the router. It is in a form of a removable memory card. And the Cisco iOS is stored in flash memory, that is the hard disk of the device. RAM is where your running configuration, that is the configuration with which you are currently operating your switch with, is stored. And it also has the running iOS on the switch, that is the operating system of the switch. NVRAM is the non-volatile RAM, and this is the permanent RAM which stores your startup configuration. So the RAM stores your temporary or the running configuration, and the NVRAM stores your permanent configuration. So let's see the difference between the two. Let's go back to our switch and let's go into the enable mode. We can see the running configuration or the startup configuration by doing a show command, show startup config. So right now we see that there is the hostname of the switch is switch. So let's see what is the running configuration of the switch right now, and the running configuration of the switch is also the same, that the hostname of the switch is switch. So let's make a small change in this, and let's change the hostname of the switch from switch to say SW1 testing environment. So now we have changed the configuration, and the switch name or the switch hostname has changed to SW1 testing environment. So let's do a show for running configuration first. we see that the host name here has changed from switch earlier to SW1 texting environment. Let's see the startup configuration of the switch. The startup configuration of the switch is still the old one. This is because we have not saved the startup configuration. So if we reload the switch at this moment, so the system is asking, do you want to save the configuration before reloading? If we say no, nothing has been saved. And once the switch reboots, it's going to reboot with the startup configuration that was there. The running configuration that we just made, that is a change in the host name, that is not going to take effect. So now what we see is the host name has reverted back to switch. To make this configuration permanent, let's create one more host name. Let's this time create SW1 production. So now we have changed the host name on the switch, and to this time around what we can use the command is write command. Once we use the write command, if we now do a show of startup, we'll see that the host name on the startup configuration is SW1 production. So this is one of the ways that you can write the configuration on the save. The other way is that you can copy running configuration to the startup configuration on the switch. So the destination file will be confirmed as startup config, yes, and the configuration will be saved. So you see the difference between both the startup configuration and the running configuration. The startup configuration is the permanent configuration which is stored in the NVRAM, that is the non-volatile RAM, which is the persistent RAM, whereas the running configuration is a temporary configuration and is stored in the RAM itself. And once you reload the switch, that configuration is lost if you have not saved it. The startup configuration is the configuration with which the switch will start while booting up, and the running configuration is the operational configuration, that is the configuration you are doing while the switch is right now running, it is operating, and any changes that you do are going to get affected in the running configuration of the switch. If you have to make that permanent, you need to write it or save the configuration or copy that configuration to the startup. So let's go back into our switch, and now we have a startup configuration on the switch, and if we want to erase this configuration, we can do a write erase. Earlier on we used the command write only. Now we are using write erase, that is we are erasing this configuration, and it confirms whether you want to continue with this. If you confirm, the configuration will be lost and it has now been erased. So if we do a show startup config, there is nothing present because we have erased that configuration. The other method that we can use to erase configuration is erase startup config. Again, we'll be asked whether we want to erase this. Yes, so again the configuration is erased. Already the configuration was erased, so there was nothing else left to erase, but this is the other method, or this is the other command that you can use to erase the configuration. The third method is erase NVRAM, but in Cisco Packet Tracer this command is not available, but in the normal switch it is available. So you need to also note that Cisco Packet Tracer does not has all the commands that are available on the physical device or the actual device. This is a limited simulation environment only. So that's it for today's session. I hope that you enjoyed it. You need to practice this a lot to get yourself comfortable with the command line. This is not something that you can catch in a day or two. You need to constantly work on it. Then only you will be able to understand it. Then you will be able to work freely on it and be fluent in it. So keep on trying, keep on using the Cisco Packet Tracer. That's a great tool. It's a simulation tool, so nothing can go bad. Thank you for watching my video. Do let me know in the comment section below what you think about today's video. Do subscribe to my channel to get the latest updates. Until we meet next time, goodbye.